In 2012, if you were to use an 11-year-old flagship GPU, chances are you won't be having a lot of fun with the GeForce 3500 from 2001, a card which was outdated far earlier than that, but now it's 2023, and the HD 7970 is exactly that, an 11-year-old flagship, so it should be useless for modern gaming. Well, times have changed, and so have GPUs, so let's see about that. As previously mentioned, it's over a decade old now. With a launch price of $500, it was the best AMD had to offer in their first generation of GCN. Aesthetically, it does hold up pretty well for such an old GPU. Definitely better than a 2001 flagship, and you would certainly not be ashamed of it in your system nowadays. But good aesthetics aren't the main thing in a GPU, performance is. So let's check out how it holds up in that segment with some of the latest and greatest titles of recent times. In Overwatch 2, the 7970 really delivers excellent performance using quite respectable settings. In general, you should turn down some of these settings, as the graphics quality is decent no matter which settings you are using, as long as it's 1080p. I used the high preset just to showcase the capabilities of the 7970 in this game. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a really demanding game on the GPU side of things, and it shows with the 7970. Every setting is turned all the way down except for the texture quality, which is set to high, as that makes a really big difference in visual quality. With these settings at 1080p, you can expect FPS around the 40s, dropping a bit below that in more crowded areas. Overall, it's a very decent experience with the 7970 in this game. Speaking about decent experiences, the Mafia Remake is also an excellently performing title on the 7970, essentially running the game at max settings with 1080p resolution, quite decent FPS. I did not expect such a result in this game from this GPU, but as it seems, this old beast can still deliver a lot of surprises. Moving on to The Witcher 3, but not the original version, rather the next-gen update, which is much more demanding on the 7970, and it does show, especially since I need to turn all the settings down to get a smooth experience, and yet again, the game does deliver some stutters from time to time, more often than I would like it. So that's the main downside here. Regardless of that, these are still very decent results, and judging by the FPS, there is some room to mess around with the settings and improve the visual quality a bit. Far Cry 6 falls into the category of surprisingly well-performing games on the 7970, as it delivers excellent results at a respectable level of visual quality. So nothing to complain about here, just a flawless experience. God of War is a game which tends to not perform that well on GPUs that don't have the latest drivers, and it's not that much different on the 7970, with the frame rate changing quite a lot, depending on the scene you're looking at. Might be that you would need to either turn down the resolution or use the built-in FSR feature to get the best results. But even with the basic 1080p resolution, it's not that bad. I can even consider this good enough. The remastered version of GTA San Andreas might not seem like a very demanding game, but the results tell a different story. I went with the 1080p resolution and pretty much every setting turned all the way down, with the main reason for that being the vegetation, which can bring the FPS below 40. Even at these settings. Higher settings, it does even drop below 30. This remaster does bring many strong GPUs to their knees, so I'm not that surprised about these results. It might be that it just wasn't optimized for a GPU like this one. Dying Light 2 also requires heavy reduction in visual quality in order to run good enough, and it does happen that the game stutters quite a bit from time to time, but it does that on many systems and cards as well, so it's not a huge surprise. After all, the game supports FSR, so you do have room to improve the performance and find the best possible settings. Days Gone does run quite well on a wide variety of old cards, and the 7970 is no exception to that, with really great results at a respectable level of visual quality. Just a great experience overall. As you may have expected it, a not so great experience comes in form of Cyberpunk 2077 running just about 30 FPS on the 7970. At this point, 1080p isn't really the best choice, and you should definitely reduce the resolution. Even without doing so, I honestly do believe that it ran better this way than it ran on the PS4 version at release. Something that can't be left unsaid is the fact that despite having all this power, problems like these will become more common as time goes by. And there's of course the missing driver support, which still doesn't represent a huge problem. It definitely will in the future. These two things on its own make the whole 7000 series basically obsolete for the future, as even now that was the main reason for me not testing more recent AAA titles. It's just not possible. On the other hand, regarding all the games tested so far, the HD 7970 holds up surprisingly well, being able to just about squeeze 1080p out of every single game tested. And with AMD's FSR feature being implemented in newer games, it seems like the 7970 might be around for a couple of more years. And of course, there is also the Vulkan API, from which old AMD GPUs benefit a lot. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a look back at this once beastly GPU as much as I have. I would honestly not consider buying one today, as the RX 560 is on a very similar price point, while consuming 3 times less power and performing at a very similar level, not to mention that it still has driver support. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to not miss any of the future projects, and I hope to see you in my next one as well.